Air Raid. Written by Jean May and illustrated by Kenny McKendry. Chapter 1. The Bomb. Jack and Harry stared at the bomb for a long time. "It's bigger than the one that fell on Crown Street," said Harry. "Twice as big," said Jack. The boys were lying on top of an old warehouse, and by peering over the edge they could see the bomb clearly. It had landed in a large crater, but it hadn't exploded, and its nose was buried in the soft earth. "Wow," said Harry. "Wish we could get closer and have a good look. Would you like to touch it, Jack?" "Touch it?" cried Jack. "You must be crazy." He didn't want to tell his brother, but he was dead scared just looking at it. "Hey, look! There's Old Tin Hat. Watch out, he'll see us." Old Tin Hat, the air raid warden, was on duty. It was his job to keep people out of the way until the bomb disposal team arrived. He had roped off the site, and no one could get anywhere near the bomb. He always chased the boys off. "You'll get killed one day," he'd yell. But the boys took no notice. Exploring bomb sites was an exciting game, and escaping from Old Tin Hat made it even better. "Do you think he's scared?" asked Jack. "No, not Old Tin Hat. He's got no feelings," said Harry. "Keep your head down, Jack. We don't want him to see us. You know what he's like. He'll start yelling." Old Tin Hat moved away to check some ropes, and the boys pulled themselves to the edge. They had another look at the bomb. "Why doesn't the bomb disposal come?" asked Jack. "Too busy," said Harry. "They won't defuse this until the morning. Not much to blow up here anyway. Most of it's already gone." Harry was right. As the brothers gazed round them, they saw heaps of rubble and big holes everywhere. Bits of walls were standing, many of them scorched black by fire. Here and there scraps of once lovely curtains hung limp and sad. Harry pointed towards the river. Some seagulls were having a party on an ancient piano which had landed down near the water. A chair was perched crazily on someone's chimney. Earth and brick dust covered everything. Suddenly, Jack felt cold. "Oh, come on, Harry, let's go." As the boys scrambled down to the street below, Old Tin Hat spotted them. "Oi! You boys!" he shouted. He waved his arms at a notice. Danger. Unexploded bomb. "We know! We know!" yelled Harry. "Well, go on home then!" bawled Old Tin Hat, running towards them, with his gas mask bumping around. "I'll have to see your mother about you again. Now clear off!" The boys knew that it wasn't a good idea to let Old Tin Hat get too close. They dodged away behind a pile of sandbags. "Down!" hissed Harry. They both crouched down, out of sight, until they heard Old Tin Hat hurrying past. The boys grinned at one another, and then Harry stood up and peered out. "OK," he said. "He's gone." "I know," said Jack. "Let's go home by Crown Street and see what's left. Mum said it got it bad the other night." Harry agreed, and they set off. As they came round the corner, by the baker's at the top of Crown Street, they both gasped with horror.
Historical background. The historical background of this book is the period from September 1940 to May 1941, when Nazi Germany conducted a sustained bombing campaign against Britain. As an industrial and political hub, London was the primary target. The bombed streets and ruined buildings described in the book were a daily reality for Londoners.
Chapter 2. He's alive! Crown Street was gone. Most of the houses had been flattened altogether. Those left standing were badly damaged. Boards covered missing windows and doors, and broken furniture was stacked on the pavement. Crazy heaps of brick and plaster stood where houses had once been. The boys wandered along in amazement. Household things lay everywhere. Harry picked up an old umbrella. There was a broken cup, a wooden spoon, someone's old tin bowl, and a scorched photo of a baby, all scattered about. "Look at this," said Harry as he picked up the photo. "Isn't everything sad here?" "Yes," agreed Jack bleakly. There was a battered tea caddy lying on the pavement, and he began kicking it along to try and cheer himself up. Suddenly, Harry grabbed his arm. "What's that?" he said sharply. "What's what?" "Listen." There was silence. "Oh, come on, Harry. It's getting dark. Mum'll be worried." "Quiet," said Harry. There it is again. A muffled moan came from somewhere nearby, and as the boys listened, there came another moan, followed by a faint, scratching noise. "It's over there," shouted Harry, pointing to a pile of rubble, "where number 10 used to be. It's odd," he continued, as they hurried towards the sound, "because the old lady in this house got killed. I heard Mum telling Grandad. Everyone thought it was shocking." They both scrambled about in the rubble. "She did have a dog," said Jack suddenly. "I bet that's it. I bet everyone thought that the dog was dead as well." "You're right. She did have a dog. A big shaggy one," said Harry excitedly. "Here, boy. Good dog. Good dog." An answering whine seemed to come from under the ground, followed by frantic scratching. "Must be in the old cellar," cried Harry. "Quick, let's clear away all this mess." As they started to pull away some planks of splintered wood, there came a muffled growl. "He's under here, all right," said Jack, yanking and pulling for all he was worth. A heavy door was wedged in the ground. They both heaved at it, gasping and straining, until the door came away in a cloud of dust and stones. The boys reeled back, coughing and spluttering. Then, when the dust had cleared, they peered down the hole. "Can't see a thing," said Harry. He shone his pocket torch down inside. "Yes, there he is, right at the bottom of the steps. I think he's trapped. The wall must have fallen in on top of him." The dog growled softly, and two big brown eyes, full of hope, looked up at the boys. "Poor dog," said Jack. "We've got to get him out, Harry. He must have been down there for 3 days, ever since the bombs dropped." "We'll get him out," replied Harry. "Grab hold of my legs." He put the torch in his mouth and inched his way down the steps on his hands. Jack held tight to Harry's legs, trying hard not to fall into the hole himself. After a lot of puffing and heaving, Harry managed to reach the bottom of the steps where the dog was trapped. He rested his torch on one of the steps. Then he started laughing. "Ugh! He's licking my face all over!" "Is there a name on his collar?" called Jack. "I can't see very well. A something," said Harry. "Raff! That's it. She had a son in the RAF. I remember Mum saying. He's an engineer like Dad. Raff! Raff! Good boy, Raff!" At the sound of his name, the dog gave a bark, and he scrambled madly to get free. "Good boy, Raff! We'll soon have you out of here," said Harry. "Whatever you do, don't let go of my legs, Jack." Harry began tearing at the rubble around Raff's tail and back. Jack could hear him talking soothingly to the dog as he struggled to set him free. Suddenly, the mournful notes of the siren began wailing around them. Searchlights lit up and fanned across the sky. Jack was scared. "It's an air raid, Harry! Hurry up! Come on, hurry up!" "Shut up!" yelled Harry. "Just don't let go of my legs!" He was working very hard. Jack could hear him gasping and grunting at the bottom of the steps. They both knew that enemy planes had been spotted because the boomp, boomp, boomp of ack-ack guns started up from way down the river. Jack pulled hard at Harry's legs. "They're coming, Harry! The planes are coming!" "So are we!" shouted Harry, and he and Raff tumbled out of the hole together. Raff was a big dog, and as he shook himself, clouds of plaster dust flew out of his coat. All three of them sneezed and coughed. Raff looked sadly at his tail. It was very squashed. "Brave dog, Raff," said the boys. Raff tried a small wag of his tail. It worked. He wagged it joyfully and jumped up at Harry, licking him all over. "He's a smasher," laughed Harry. "I'm glad we found him."
Please describe this picture. Possible answer. Harry and Jack saved the dog, Raff, who belonged to an old woman living in their city. Tragically, she had been killed during an air raid, leaving Raff trapped beneath the ruins of her home. While passing the wreckage, Jack caught the faint sound of a moan and a rhythmic scratching coming from the old underground cellar. Despite the house being completely demolished and the main access to the cellar blocked by debris, the boys refused to leave him behind. Risking their lives under the unstable structure, they worked tirelessly to create an exit. After a grueling effort, they finally freed him. A tag on the dog's collar confirmed his name was Raff. Aside from a squashed tail, which still managed to wag, Raff was alive and well.
The boomp, boomp of gunfire was getting louder, and a red glow lit up the night sky. They could hear the deep droning of enemy aircraft and knew that the nearby docks were being bombed. "Come on, Jack. There's nowhere safe round here. We've got to go, quick." Both boys began racing towards home as fast as they could go, and Raff joined in beside them. As they were running, they became aware of a new noise, a swishing, whooshing, whistling sound. "Down!" yelled Harry. He clutched Raff round the neck and flung himself to the ground. Jack landed beside him. A booming explosion filled their heads. The world shook. Lumps of brick and earth spattered down around them. There was the terrifying crump of a building collapsing nearby. "Jack! Jack! Are you okay?" shouted Harry in alarm, clinging onto Raff's collar and reaching out to his brother. I'm okay, said Jack, scrambling to his feet. They ran on until the breath hurt in their throats. The noise of gunfire and the terrifying drone of aircraft overhead was joined by the frantic ringing of ambulance and fire engine bells. The air became hazy with smoke, and as the boys rounded the top of Crown Street, they saw a row of shops ablaze. "Look at that!" panted Harry. The road was full of fire engines and hoses and firemen fighting to get their ladders in position. One of them yelled to the boys, "Not down here, lads! You get home, quick!" Crump! There was a loud bang, and they saw an old church on the other side of the road fall in. its magnificent steeple crumpled instantly and became another pile of rubble. "Other way!" gasped Harry, and the boys streaked off, Raph sticking close beside them. They didn't need to use a torch. So many buildings were on fire that it was as bright as day. Ambulance and fire engine bells seemed to be ringing everywhere. Jack's legs ached. "Mum'll be mad when we get home," he wheezed. "If we get home," gasped Harry. "Come on, down here." Chapter 3. One Too Many. He rushed through a dark doorway, pulling Jack with him, and snapped on his torch. "Down these steps," he said urgently. Suddenly, it was quiet. They could hear Raph's paws clicking down the steps ahead of them. Jack clattered down behind his brother, finding his own torch now. He was glad to be away from the frightening din in the street. "Where is this?" "It's the wine cellars," said Harry. "I've never seen that door open before. It must be the blast from the bombs." They got to the bottom of the steps and stared round. The whole place was built of stone. Racks and racks of bottles and barrels lined the walls. Huge barrels stood on the floor, and cases of wine were stacked everywhere. It was silent and peaceful. "We can stay down here until the raid is over," said Jack, grinning with relief. Harry smiled. "It's so quiet down here. You'd never think there was a war on." Raph began to sniff about, and the boys followed him, gazing at the bottles. They were mostly very dusty, and the spiders had had a good time spinning webs from cork to cork. Suddenly, they heard a distant thud from somewhere above in the street. The boys felt the floor shake. "Sounds like another building gone," said Harry. "Hey, look at that barrel! Wow!" There was a terrible rumbling sound, and a barrel rolled forward off its shelf. It tumbled onto a rack of bottles. The whole thing sagged as most of the bottles smashed open. Wine spilled and gurgled onto the stone floor, and soon pools of wine glittered in the torchlight. Raph jumped forward, wagging his tail. He lapped gratefully at the puddles. "He is thirsty," laughed Jack. "Look at him." Raph was really enjoying himself. He tasted all the puddles in turn, lapping greedily. Jack tasted some. "Ugh," he said. "Nasty sour stuff. He must be thirsty to drink that." "I bet you'd drink it if you'd been trapped in a dusty cellar for 3 days. Harry stopped speaking and caught his breath. "Oh no! Look at the steps!" Jack stumbled after Harry as he rushed back to the steps. The walls on either side of the entrance had fallen in. The way out was blocked. "It must have been that crash we heard when the barrel rolled off the shelf," cried Jack. "Harry, what shall we do? Nobody knows we're down these cellars. Even if we shouted all night, no one would hear us. We'll never get out. We'll end up like those old bottles, all covered in cobwebs." "Shut up, Jack. What rubbish. Of course we'll get out," snapped Harry, trying to sound brave. "There must be another way out. The wine used to be unloaded and brought in from the river. All we have to do is find the doors." He shone his torch deep into the far end of the cellar. "Come on and keep together." The place was like a huge underground cavern. They moved along slowly, searching in the torchlight. Raph padded after them, tasting puddles as he went. They saw a pair of huge wooden doors high up in the wall. "What kind of door is that?" asked Jack. "That's no use to anyone." "It's where they used to bring the wine in from the river before the war," said Harry with relief. "Come on, we'll soon be out of here." The doors were kept closed with a huge metal rod, and Jack had to climb onto Harry's shoulders to reach it. After a struggle, Jack managed to loosen it. The doors creaked open. The boys scrambled up and through the opening. They found themselves looking down a long, dark tunnel. They could hear water dripping in the distance, and the walls of the tunnel shone wetly in the beams of torchlight. Raph had a bit of trouble climbing up, and Harry had to yank him through by his collar. He seemed reluctant to go any further. "I don't think he likes this place," said Harry. "Don't blame him either. It's spooky," whispered Jack. He kept behind Harry as they made their way forward. The tunnel seemed to go on and on. There was no sound but the drip, drip of water. "Hey, come on, Raph," called Harry. They could see Raph hanging back near the doors. He came forward slowly, and they all started off again. The tunnel hadn't been used since the beginning of the war. Odd bottles lay about, and empty cases, and half-made barrels littered the way. The boys picked their way along carefully. Suddenly, they realized that Raph was no longer with them. Harry flashed his torch back along the tunnel. They could see Raph leaning against the wall. When Harry called, he stumbled towards them. "What's the matter with him?" said Jack worriedly. When Raph reached the boys, he sank slowly to the ground. "Poor dog! What is it?" they said, bending down to him. Raph sighed deeply and rolled over. "He's drunk!" cried Harry. Raph looked blearily at Harry and yawned a great yawn. A blast of wine-laden breath hit the boys in the face. Then Raph sighed again and fell into a deep sleep. "That's done it," said Harry. "Now I'll have to carry him." He put his arms around Raph's chest and stood up. At once he staggered back with the weight of the sleeping dog. Raph was so long that his back legs scraped along the floor. His nose was rammed under Harry's chin, and his front legs stuck out. Jack giggled. Harry slumped against the wall of the tunnel. "We'll have to think of something else," he gasped. "I know. Let's make a stretcher," suggested Jack. They took off their jackets and tied the sleeves together, making a kind of bed. Harry rolled Raph into it. They grabbed hold of their jackets and stood up. Their stretcher sagged a bit in the middle, but it was okay. "His legs are dangling over the edge," laughed Jack.
Please explain this picture. Example answer. After saving Raph, they attempted to make their way home. The air was thick with the heavy droning of German aircraft, the rattle of gunfire, and the thundering boom of explosions. Seeking safety, they scrambled to find an underground shelter as the night sky, consumed by fire, lit up like day. Eventually, they discovered a wine cellar deep underground as shells exploded above them. The impact caused the barrels to burst, sending wine flooding across the floor. In the chaos, Raph began drinking from the puddles and quickly became drunk, forcing the others to carry him. They soon realized that the heavy bombardment had caused their exit to disappear behind a wall of rubble.
"He doesn't care," said Harry. Come on." They made their way forward again, but Raph was heavy, and they had to rest a lot. Jack was a year younger than Harry, and not so strong. "We've been down here for hours," he said. "I bet we'll be in trouble when we get home." "I think we're in trouble right now," said Harry in a low voice. "Can you see what I see?" Jack groaned. "Oh no, I don't believe it. Not again." The boys stood horrified. In front of them, the tunnel had fallen in. There was no way forward. "I'm very scared, Harry," whispered Jack. His voice wobbled. "I've got to think," said Harry, trying not to show how frightened he was. "I've got to think. Put Raph down for a minute. Switch off the torches to save the batteries." "Let's not stand here in the dark," begged Jack, close to tears. But bravely he did as his brother told him, and they both stood in the pitch-black tunnel, listening to one another breathing. They stood there for perhaps a minute, though to Jack it seemed like 10, when Harry suddenly yelled, "Light! There's light!" He clutched Jack's arm. "There's light! See it?" Jack peered into the darkness. He could just see a chink of light through the pile of rubble in front of them. They put their torches on again and grinned at each other. "Let's go!" They dragged Raph to a safe distance and attacked the mess that barred their way. They scrabbled madly at the broken brickwork, pulling and tossing the lumps aside. Soon they had cleared a small hole, and through it they could just see moonlight. "Yes!" cried Harry. "Nearly there! Keep going! Keep going!" Both boys doubled their efforts, gasping, grunting and coughing as their aching arms gradually cleared a hole big enough to squeeze through. "OK, that's big enough," said Harry. "Phew!" He wiped the sweat from his face and looked at Raph. He was fast asleep. "It'll be hours before he wakes up. You go first, Jack. I'll push him and you pull." Jack clambered into the hole and wriggled through. Harry saw Jack's pale face peering back at him from the other side. "Harry!" hissed Jack. "You won't like it out here." "What?" called Harry. "Now what are you on about?" He started to bundle Raph into the hole. It wasn't easy. Raph seemed to have so many legs, and Harry had never seen anything flop about so much. Every now and then, Raph snorted loudly. "What?" called Harry. "Now what are you on about?" He started to bundle Raph into the hole. It wasn't easy. Raph seemed to have so many legs, and Harry had never seen anything flop about so much. Every now and then, Raph snorted loudly, blowing dust into Harry's face. All the time, he could hear Jack muttering from the other side. "Shut up, Jack! Grab hold of his collar and pull!" Raph suddenly disappeared through the opening, and Harry followed just in time. As he scrambled through, an avalanche of bricks slithered down behind him. There was no going back. Harry choked and rubbed his eyes clear of dust. What he saw made his stomach lurch with terror. "No," he whispered. His voice shook. "It's that bomb. It's the one we saw from the warehouse. It can't be true." But it was true. There was no mistake. The terrible shape loomed above them. Its metal casing gleamed in the moonlight. They could almost reach out and touch it. They had come face to face with the bomb. Chapter 4. Fear. "I said you wouldn't like it out here," said Jack. "I'm scared." "Shut up," said Harry. They stood frozen with terror, staring at the bomb. This was the end. At last, Harry pulled himself together. "Jack," he said in a low voice, "let go of Raf's collar. You're choking him." Jack let go. The dog slid to the ground with a happy sigh and slept on.
Please explain this picture. Example answer. They searched tirelessly for an exit until they spotted a faint glimmer of light filtering through the pile of rubble. Working frantically, they managed to clear a hole just large enough to squeeze through. Finally, they emerged from the cellar, only to be met with a horrifying sight: the same unexploded bomb they had seen earlier that day. To make matters worse, an avalanche of falling bricks suddenly gave way, sealing the hole behind them. They were trapped in the dark crater, alone with the danger of the bomb.
The moonlight made everything look as bright as day. The sides of the crater were sheer, and the soil was loose and sandy. Jack reached up and tried to get a foothold, but the soil gave way under his shoe, and he fell back against Harry. Both boys staggered together, almost on top of the bomb. Small stones rattled down the sides of the crater, pinging and bouncing off the metal. Harry and Jack clung to one another, numb with fear. "Move back slowly," whispered Harry. They moved back, slowly, very slowly. They reached the side of the crater, and Jack's knees gave way. He slid to the ground and closed his eyes. Harry sat down beside him and spoke softly. "We must keep still. It might have a trembler." Jack opened his eyes. "What's a trembler?" "It's a thing that sets off the explosive. If there is a sudden noise or movement, bang!" Raf snored loudly. Harry clamped Raf's jaws together and stroked his shaggy head. "He's having a dream." "I wish I was," said Jack. His voice shook. "Harry, I've just thought. Will they blow up the bomb here?" "Don't be daft," said Harry. But his face was pale. They dragged Raf across their legs to keep them warm, untied their jackets, and put them back on. "What's going to happen to us, Harry? I wish we were back home with Mum." "They'll come and find us in the morning. They've got to. We've just got to wait." As the moonlight shone down, they waited as if made of stone. Hours went by, and they stayed still. The two boys, the dog, and the bomb. Chapter 5. Rescue. Dawn came slowly. A shaft of sunlight reached into the crater, making the metal glint and shine. The boys were numb and stiff and hungry. They tried not to look at the huge shape that loomed over them. Harry suddenly opened his eyes and clutched at Jack's arm. "Listen," he whispered. Jack's eyes widened instantly, and both boys strained their ears. They could hear a man talking softly. The voice seemed a long way off. Jack went to shout, but Harry clamped his hand over Jack's mouth. "Don't shout," he hissed. "We'll be blown to pieces." The soft voice came nearer and nearer. Suddenly, an army captain appeared at the top of the crater. He was talking into a mouthpiece strapped round his neck. He stopped talking when he saw the boys and blinked several times. "What the—" he said. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Harry found his voice. "Jack and Harry Brown," he croaked. "Is that dog dead?" asked the captain. "No, he's drunk," said Harry. The captain blinked again and passed a tired hand over his face. A squawking voice came from a box on his shoulder. The captain opened his eyes and spoke into the mouthpiece. "Sergeant," he said. Then he stopped and took a deep breath before he went on. "There's 2 kids and a drunken dog down here." A single squawk came from the box. The captain crouched down and stared closely at the bomb. "Don't move and don't speak," he said, "or we'll all go up." He began talking quietly to his sergeant. Jack and Harry were too stiff to move. They clung on to Raph and waited. Another man appeared at the top of the crater. "I thought so," said the man. "It's them, all right." "It's old Tin Hat," whispered Jack. "He'll kill us." Old Tin Hat was carrying a ladder. He and the captain lowered it into the loose earth next to the boys. "Keep still," the captain warned them. As the captain held on at the top, Old Tin Hat started to come down the ladder very slowly, very gently, step by step. At last he reached the bottom, and with one movement he lifted Jack onto his back. Harry watched as Jack was carried up. It seemed to take an age. There was a sudden fall of earth, and Old Tin Hat froze halfway up. Harry gasped with terror, but the ladder didn't move. Old Tin Hat started up again, and when he got to the top, hands reached out and Jack disappeared. Old Tin Hat started down the ladder again, very slowly, one rung at a time. At last he got to the bottom. Harry clung on to Raph. "I'm not leaving him," he whispered. "Dog goes last, sonny," said Old Tin Hat softly. "I'm not leaving him," Harry whispered again, clutching Raph tighter than ever. Old Tin Hat sighed. He crouched down beside Harry, and they stared at one another, with the dog between them. "OK," Old Tin Hat said at last. "Come on." He stood up and pulled Harry onto his back. Then he scooped up Raph and hunched him under one arm. This sudden movement woke Raph, who peered round, looking very surprised. Old Tin Hat started to climb the ladder for the second time. 1 rung. 2 rungs. 3 rungs. 4 rungs. He went very slowly, heaving himself from one rung to the next. The weight of the boy and the dog made him gasp. The climb up the ladder was a long one, and the rough uniform tickled Harry's nose, making him want to sneeze. Raph just hung in the air, looking rather silly.
Please explain this picture. Example answer. The next morning, they woke up exhausted and starving. Suddenly, the sound of a voice reached them, but they could not shout to grab the man's attention. Luckily, he came closer until he appeared at the very edge of the crater. They had finally been found. The man quickly returned with Old Tin Hat, who was carrying a ladder. They carefully lowered it into the depths of the crater. In order not to trigger the bomb, the group had to be extremely cautious, ensuring every step was secure as they climbed toward safety. Thanks for watching. This was part of the book Air Raid. If you would like to read the full story, please follow the link below. Well done. Thank you very much. Narrated by Teacher Phoebe from English Aloud. Questions and answers by Kevin and Phoebe from English Aloud.
About the author. I was a school teacher at first, and then I became a professional pianist. I found writing was fun and helped me to relax, and I have had a number of stories published. I now live in Norfolk, but my family came from the East End of London, which is the setting for Air Raid. As a small child, I can remember what it was like to be bombed, and I can tell you it was very frightening. I'm glad that you will live it only through my words.